Good morning, CHD. Good morning, world. Welcome to Pediatric Perspectives. We are looking at children's health challenges from a different perspective, one that includes critical thinking. I have one of the world's most important critical thinkers joining me today. We're going to give you the honest truth. Welcome back, Dr. Suzanne Humphries. It's so good to have you back.
Hello, Dr. Thomas. Good to see you again.
So I had the utmost respect for you for a couple reasons. I didn't know who you were until I read Dissolving Illusions. And then I heard that you were on the Vaxxed bus. And I was aware of that. And I thought, wow, what an amazing doctor. It's not easy to get on a bus and ride around the country. And you all were documenting stories, I believe, from families mostly that had children who were affected by vaccines. Is that pretty much what was going on?
Right. So I jumped on the bus at the end of 2016 after I had met the Vaxxed crew in California, where I was doing a talk. I think it was at a chiropractic conference. And I had heard Dr. Wakefield and I'd heard Del Bigtree endorse my book. And so I was really happy to meet them. And then I got to meet Polly as well. And she had read my autobiography and she really liked that. And so I was invited on the bus by Patrick Layton, who was driving the bus at the time. And so I did a little tour. And then at the end of that year, they invited me to come for a longer tour. So I was on there, I think it was actually more than a year, although we did take some time off here and there. It was something that was already established. I had nothing to do with the Vaxxed 1 movie, and I had nothing to do with getting the bus, and I had nothing to do with what Polly was. That was her thing. Like, she just started walking around with a cell phone for a while, and those interviews became so popular that everything was built around that, which was great because it was the first time anyone had done that, and at least with such massive audience and such massive amount of interviews that she carries on doing to this day.
True.
And she's a brilliant interviewer, as you know.
Parents were being kicked out of other practices if they didn't want to follow the CDC schedule. And they would end up at my doorstep. And at one point, for years, I was getting 3, 4, 5 new families a week. And I'm sitting across from a family that's telling the story of how their completely healthy child gets a vaccine or a series of vaccines. Often it was the MMR, but sometimes it was a series of vaccines. And they watched their child regress either immediately or sometime shortly thereafter into severe nonverbal autism. And it was like, what is going on? And it's tragic to sit there and hear these stories. Can you share a little bit about what you were hearing and how that affected you?
So remember, I pretty much ignored the childhood issue for 3 years, 4 years, 5 years even, because I felt like everybody was concentrating on autism and concentrating on the childhood vaccine schedule. And I was not a pediatrician, and I felt like it was best for me to stay in my area of education, which was in adults, in the kidneys. And so I was really looking at those vaccines. And so that's where I was for the longest time. And then I spent some time on the bus and I got a really quick education on the childhood vaccines and the potential to cause devastation and what autism really looked like. And I will never doubt it again. I never doubted it in the first place, but I didn't understand really what autism was really like in real life, because growing up, there was nobody in my sphere. There was always like the one kid that had like the green snot coming out of his nose all the time. And he was a little too skinny and looked really unhealthy, but brain wise, they seemed okay. The real sad part was seeing like how parents would split apart and marriages would disintegrate. And oftentimes the grandparents ended up having to take on the grandchildren. And some of these grandchildren grow really big and really strong and can become really difficult to control. And I'd see these little grandmas kind of like following these really big boys around that they had minimum control over. And oh gosh, that just still just etched in my memory. but also just hearing the stories of seeing the pictures and seeing the videos of how everything was fine. And then the shots come along, and then the brain or the immune system or the cancers. And when it comes to Gardasil, the neuromuscular function or the gastrointestinal problems, it's not just all about autism. There's, you name it, any organ can be affected by vaccination, because we're really dealing with the immune system. So yeah, I actually had to leave the bus for some of that time. I don't know how Polly did it, sat behind that camera. I think for her, it was just kind of a bit of retribution, maybe just because of what happened with her and Billy and how hard John worked at resuscitating Billy. So I couldn't handle it. So I would often stay outside talking to the people that were waiting in line.
I know exactly what you're talking about. And here's the thing. You can't unsee what you see, right? You can't unlearn what you've learned. And so people like you and I who got this massive exposure to what was really going on, I feel like we had no choice but to share with the world, hey, there's something really important here. And you did it with your book, Dissolving Illusions. You've done it with all the education you continue to do. So thank you for that. What would you say to our colleagues who just sort of write this off? Oh, that's garbage. Vaccines are safe and effective. I think you spoke about lying studies to sort of validate vaccine safety. What do you say to all of that? Because we still have a large segment of the population don't get it. They still believe the media narrative that vaccines are safe and effective.
Yeah, well, I'm probably not the greatest person to ask that to, because I gave up on doctors. I just think the whole lot of them, if they read the books that are available, not just my book, but any book that talks about this issue, and they can walk away from it and still carry on doing what they're doing, then, there's got to be a reason, and it's not just one reason. Look, some of them are very much in debt, but I can tell you that I'm someone, and so are you. It's like, okay, I'm in debt, but I'm going to get my way out of this, and there's no way I'm going to stay trapped, and I'm not going to keep doing something that's completely against my conscience. So when doctors get it, and they do something different. The problem, as I see it, and this is worldwide, is that when doctors do wake up and do want to do something different and do want to do really holistic care and take care of families and children and not jab them and help them get that status of not being jabbed, that it's a really difficult position to be in. As you're a prime example, is that they'll do you in. So I think, it's much easier to just step out and start saying what we have to say than it is to try to stay in the centralized medical system, or even out not in centralized medicine, because they can cancel you either way. But it's really hard to do both. It's really hard to talk about vaccines and do patient care because of the medical system that is going to do everything they can to bring you down. And the trolls will start feeding them information about, what you're doing, and set you up and send, moles into your practice. So it is a difficult situation. So that's why for me, it's always been educate the parents. And I find the vast majority of parents, this is just my experience, okay? I'm not telling anybody not to vaccinate, but my experience is the vast majority of parents who don't vaccinate their kids in general do not need the medical system. And if they do need the medical system, it's usually because of a cut or because of a broken bone.
Yeah.
In which case, I think you can go in there. You have enough time to educate yourself on the issues and stand up for yourself politely, but firmly.
Yeah. Well, you led right into what I was going to ask you next, which is what's your understanding and observation about the health of the unvaccinated? And I remember with our first interview we had, you talked about this one family you knew who they weren't vaccinating and how incredibly healthy their kids were. And then probably when you were on the bus, you heard stories, I imagine, of maybe siblings of a vaccine injured child or a vaccine affected child or otherwise affected child not vaccinating. And what's been your observation now? I think you've probably seen enough, heard enough, and read enough to speak with some authority about the health of the unvaccinated.
Right. So I think the non-vaccinated children and infants have an absolute edge on their health, in the sense of an advantage, I should say, an advantage on their health status because they're normal. And a lot of people look at the non-vaccinated children and think, oh, look at, they're so fetchingly, superhumanly healthy. No, that's normal. That's what it's supposed to look like. Now, That doesn't mean that your child can't become contaminated with toxic metals somewhere else. It doesn't mean that you can't feed them rubbish food and their immune system can be affected by it. So is the health of all vaccinated children pristine? No, they're still living on the same planet with us. Their parents might not be awake to other areas of health that need to be attended to. So to me, the biggest problem are people who don't vaccinate their kids, don't really understand why they didn't vaccinate their kids, can't stand up for themselves, don't teach their children why they're not vaccinated, and carry on living, a lifestyle with the standard American diet and do everything else, non-holistically. I think those people are the ones that are going to get themselves in trouble and probably not be the greatest, strongest members of our force as well.
You touched on it, but I'd like to massage it a little further. Your experience with cancer in kids, and is there a relationship at all with vaccines?
I can't give you statistics on this, but you know as well as I do that early on in your career, you would have seen very little cancer in children. You might have seen the occasional leukemia in children. And then all of a sudden, now maybe it's just because they decided to get fancier, but I remember around the time I was leaving Maine, in Bangor, Maine, they had opened up a children's cancer institute. And it was a huge building and it was very well outfitted and they were not short of a dime. And I believe the vaccinated, unvaccinated studies will bring this out in color. And that really, I think the vaccinated, unvaccinated studies that do exist does definitely show an advantage in the immune systems of the children that are not vaccinated in terms of allergies and immune deficiencies. So that plays right into cancer, because cancer, by large part, it's a toxin-mediated disease, but it's also an immune-mediated disease, and our immune systems and toxins interplay with each other. So all your drainage systems and detox systems need to be in good shape if you're going to deal with life on this earth. But if you're going to start throwing these injections in with animal DNA and viruses and retroviruses, et cetera, that aren't even quantified, let alone qualified in the vaccines, then to me, it's just a setup for problems. And it's a very lucrative industry. The vaccine industry and the cancer industry are highly profitable. The doctors that do really well and the CEOs of companies that do really well are vaccines and cancer.
Yeah, no, it's so true. I sort of observed it or figured out a pattern. We highly vaccinate, which suppresses the immune system rather than enhances it. And it triggers autoimmunity. So many of the vaccines have too much aluminum, and you've spoken extensively on this, and aluminum is a known trigger of autoimmunity. Autoimmunity drugs are another huge moneymaker. I mean, it's like $100,000 a year per person if you're put on one of these newer autoimmune drugs. And all they do is suppress the immune system. And what happens when you suppress the immune system? You get cancer. And you can't fight infections as well either. That's right. So we've got big moneymaker vaccines triggering autoimmunity, among other things. Another big moneymaker for the immunosuppressants, triggering cancer, huge moneymaker. I think it's number one now. The whole system is a mess. There are still parents who are maybe can't quite go there as far as doing none. And if that's where you're at, I would encourage you to read my latest book, Vax Facts, because that will give you informed consent on everything in a way that you can understand and make a really informed decision. But from your research and understanding, Suzanne, Dr. Humphries, what are the vaccines that worry you the most?
Well, first, I love Vax Facts. I have a copy of it now, hard copy, and I went through and I thought, oh, this is great. I wish I thought of this. How you put it together and all that information, absolutely fantastic. So I endorse that book.
Oh, thank you.
Are there some vaccines? Okay, but the way I look at it is, if we were to stop vaccinating for some vaccines, which ones would get the least argument from a biological standpoint, or from this, herd immunity idea? And, so stop vaccinating pregnant women, full stop, just stop it.
Agreed.
Yeah. All pregnancy vaccines should end. A pregnant woman, should be a protected relationship there. So birth. No vaccines at birth, no hepatitis B vaccines at birth, 0. We will not have any herd immunity problem if that happens, because there's no herd immunity that happens from flu shots. There's no herd immunity that happens from pertussis shots or for COVID shots. And Anthony Fauci and Morins wrote a paper basically telling us that the flu shots and the COVID shots basically are terrible in terms of providing herd immunity or personal immunity. And they wax poetic about it. And I bring up that article all the time. And in terms of pertussis, the more vaccines a person gets, the more IgG4 that is produced. And IgG4 is something that allergy doctors love, because what it does is it causes anergy, A-N-E-R-G-Y, which means that your immune system stops responding to that particular thing. So that's a fact. And that's why we see so much pertussis in older children who have had several vaccines and in adults. The problems we're going to run into with the vaxophiles, if we were to stop vaccinating, are mostly the viral vaccines, in particular, measles. If anyone's going to be worried about chickenpox, I can pretty much ignore them. But I do think that what happens is these vaccines have created a situation, which I talk about all the time, where before they were invented, the babies and the mothers were protected. The mother was able to provide good protection through the placenta and her breast milk. And then after the vaccines were invented and younger people started getting vaccinated, that basically stopped the transmission of the disease in that particular group. But as time has gone by and the real people that were immune, the herd, like my parents and their parents, have died off, now there's just the rest of us, the vaccine immune. And that's why we're seeing resurgences. So because the vaccines fail. So they've set up a bit of a pickle here now, to the point where some of our heroes like Peter Abbe and Christine Benn are saying that even after measles is eradicated, we should continue to give measles vaccines because it's so wonderful from the non-specific effects. And I'm just sorry, I will never accept that, ever. So we're going to have problems from all over the place with measles. So yeah. I'm not going to go there now because it's just a theoretical discussion. As far as mumps, it's a ridiculous vaccine. It should never have been invented. We get breakthrough all the time. We know the Merck falsify their studies to prove the efficacy, and that even in a court of law, that Merck still wins. So what else have we got? Gardasil, stop it. Gardasil, HPV vaccines, stop immediately. Less crippling, less problems in teenagers. The amount of I remember back in the good old days when we thought Gardasil was the worst thing that ever happened.
Yeah, then came COVID.
And we were showing, look at all these Gardasil injuries. If you add them all up, it's more than all the other injuries for X amount of time. And now here we are. This is my problem, is I just keep seeing people keep going, we're winning, we're making headway. And I'm going, okay, in your head we are. But in reality, they just keep throwing worse insults at us. And then if by some miracle they decide to stop recommending a murderous vaccine to pregnant women and 6-month-old babies, we're going to go, yay? Like, this is the position they have us in, is that they've made it so bad. It's like it's insult to injury. And if they remove some of the insult, we're supposed to celebrate? Like, this is what's happened. Like, look here, not there. And I just think the whole thing needs to be burned to the ground, quite frankly. But I think that it needs to be burned to the ground in a controlled burn. And I've outlined to you which flu shots stop them, COVID shots stop them. So there's a few vaccines maybe that we'll have to be a little more careful about stopping. The ones that you and I had. Tetanus vaccines, look, that should be elective when a child is older. You don't need to give a baby a tetanus vaccine. And I know you and James Sears have talked, a lot about the difference between vaccinating a newborn, a 3-month-old versus a 2-year-old, and to give one at a time. Like, I'm a total anti-vaxxer. Okay, I'm a completely unapologetic anti-vaxxer, and I always will be, because I know the facts. I know the immunology. I know the difference between vaccinated and unvaccinated. I know how to deal with diseases if they happen. I've treated tetanus. I'm not worried about it. I know how to clean a wound. So I'm a total anti-vaxxer. But I know everybody else isn't. And I know that I'm on that other end of the spectrum where, especially when it comes to doctors, there's not that many of us. Yeah. So I get that. So I'm willing to still talk and negotiate. I'm not someone who's going to slam somebody out of the way for fully going on to the vaccine program. In fact, a lot of my patients have done just that. And then I'm cleaning up the mess that's occurred as a result of it.
So what if we get rid of mandates, because that's just wrong, to force people to take a medical procedure, and those who want vaccines, they can have them? And what would happen if most of us decided we don't want these vaccines because we've done our research, as you have, and I now have. Took me a little longer than you. And there's no safe vaccine on the childhood schedule, period. So at this point, I'm also an anti-vaxxer because we don't have a safe vaccine. We don't even have a single one that was properly tested for safety. However, if you aren't comfortable with how you want your child to die, I say in the book Vax Facts that you are more likely to die from the vaccine than you are from the disease for which there is a vaccine. And this is true for every single vaccine on the childhood schedule. It's still a death. It's still super rare, but you're much more likely to die from the vaccine. So which do you want? You want a greater chance of dying from the vaccine or a lesser chance of dying from the disease? And of course, for many of these diseases, the risk is zero. What would happen if we just stopped? Those who wanted to stop. I mean, if you want the vaccine because you're scared of those unvaxxed people, go get the vaccine.
Again, this is a theoretical discussion because I don't think mandates are going anywhere. I don't care what politicians we have helping us out, because if mandates were to stop and the word were to really get out and parents en masse and adults and teenagers stop taking vaccines, these companies would crash. This is something to talk to a financial person about, but I just know that that's not going to be allowed to happen. And vaccines have been protected since the time of Jenner, but the protective coating around the entire vaccine program, I think, has only become thicker, not weaker over time. But theoretically, I agree with you. Absolutely. And I think there are lots of parents who are just doing that already. They're living off grid in a lot of ways. And even if they're on grid, they're homeschooling or, just decided that they're not going to do the vaccines. And what I always say is, once you're born, there's no guarantees for a long life, but there are risk benefit ratios to all of your decisions. And I believe that when you add up all those decisions, that the risk benefit ratio for the vast majority of people favors staying away from vaccines, getting good sunlight, and staying away from drugs whenever possible, using food as your medicine, and having good nutrition and hydration. Drink water. I know that sounds crazy, but I'm a kidney specialist. I think I maybe have a little bit of credibility in this area. Most people are walking around dehydrated. And if you're dehydrated, the electricity in your body isn't going to be adequate. And if your minerals aren't in good condition, your electricity isn't going to be adequate. And we're electric beings. And if that gets interrupted for any reason, then your immune system isn't going to be working as well as possible. So that's my 2 cents on where health comes from, and that people should just do it. And they'll say, well, I can't send my kid to school and we have to have 2 incomes. Well, that's a choice you made. You made a choice to have children, and you made a choice to have whatever you have around with your 2 incomes. But I just know so many people who have decided that maybe they didn't need all that money and that they could simplify their lifestyle. Look, I went and lived in a tent for a year and a half, and if I had kids, I'd have brought them with me. Yeah. There was nothing. There is still nothing aside of some maybe throwing me in jail that could get me to ever take a vaccine.
Yeah.
Because look, if they're going to throw you in jail, they're going to vaccinate you against your will. And that's my logic on that. It's not because I'm afraid of jail, just because I'm not stupid. And I know that I can go to jail and get a vaccine, or I can get a vaccine maybe and not go to jail. So that's kind of where I come from on that.
Yeah. I am going to have you back one more time to talk about natural ways of dealing with that what if scenario of I got measles or I got some disease, whether there's a vaccine for it or not, because believe it or not, you are extraordinarily knowledgeable in this area. So I'm going to pick your brain on that, if that's okay.
Okay. What's left of it, you can have little pieces.
And then we'll also wrap it up with, what parents should do. And you sort of touched on it with the end of this interview, but I'm so grateful to you. We're going to put up for you all how to get a hold of Dr. Suzanne Humphries' information. And thanks for being on the show.
Sure. Thank you.
Folks, you can find me at kidsfirstforever.com. I coach, and I'm also on doctorsandscience.com. It is always great to be with you. We'll see you again next week.
As a mom, you just think you're doing the best thing that you can for your kid because you love them and you want to, just do what's best for them.
I didn't want to be here anymore.
I have her medical records from her very first, before the day that she got her Gardasil vaccine, and she had a clean bill of health. I mean, you know, the kid ate healthy, the kid was super muscular.
I'm very lightheaded. I'm very tired.
POTS.
Yeah, I have POTS, and then sometimes I have like microbursts of seizures and stuff like that. So it just makes me like really tired, so I pretty much just stay in bed whenever that stuff happens. And I get nauseous.
You just always think that nobody would ever lie to you or not tell you, or, you know, the adverse reactions are real and they're life changing. I'm Jennifer Young.
And you are
Ed Young.
Ed Young, and you are.
Liesa Young.
And how old are you?
I'm 18 years old.
Okay, and this is a Gardasil story.
Yes.
About what happened to you. Okay, so let's go right back to what you were like before you took this shot or shots. Let's describe
Extremely active. I mean, if you talk about a sport that you could probably do, this child could do it and do it well. She was playing soccer, basketball, gymnastics, softball, you name it.
All of it.
She could do it all and do them all from practice to practice in one day. I mean,
So you were doing sport all the time.
Yep, all the time. From whenever I woke up to when I went back to bed.
Okay, and so what made you take the Gardasil shot? What happened?
Well, I gave it to my oldest daughter, and then gave it to my son, because at the time they were just like, this is going to help your child from getting the HPV virus, you know, and it was going to, and I was like, okay, it's going to help keep them from getting cancer. As a mom, I was like, you know, you want to do everything that you can for your kid. And so I was like, okay, yeah, go ahead, give me that.
And just out of interest, so your first daughter had it,
Yes.
and then your son had
then
it.
my
Why
son.
did they say why a boy should have it?
At the time, I'd given it to my first one, and she was like, well, he better get it too, because I got it. I mean, that's what he said before we left. And so we left, and we started with him, which he had reactions to, but of course we didn't realize it at the time.
What kind of reactions did he have?
Well, I went back and I called the doctor to line everything up, because of course at first we didn't realize, you know, exactly what was going on with her when hers was so severe. But he had the third round on Monday, and by Friday he was hospitalized with gastroparesis. And he was like that for 6 weeks, but they did give him medicine, and they were also concerned because he went from the 95th percentile to the 5th percentile of body weight. So they gave him medicine, and he grew like you would not believe. And the stomach, he still has stomach issues, but nothing like, I mean, that time his stomach just would not work. So he just, you know, couldn't eat anything.
So what's the age gap between you and your brother?
We're 2 years apart.
So did you get a shot at the same time as him, or how did that work?
No, that's my middle son.
Mhm.
My middle son got it, and then 2 years later,
Yeah.
she got it. And
Okay.
of course I didn't realize at the time.
So you had your first Gardasil shot, and did they take a history of your health before they did they do anything or warn you about any side effects that could happen?
No.
Did have a clean
Oh,
bill
yeah.
of health when she got the first one.
Yeah, I have her medical records from her very first, before the day that she got her Gardasil vaccine, and she had a clean bill of health. I mean, you know, the kid ate healthy, the kid was super muscular, and, you know, and everything, and had a complete clean bill of health that day.
Did you take any other shots that day, or just the Gardasil?
Yeah, whatever shots were recommended at that time. I mean,
So it wasn't just the Gardasil she took that day?
no. No.
You don't know what they were?
I probably have it in my records.
Be interesting to hear what else you
Oh
had that
yeah,
day.
I mean, if you want to see them, I have them in my records.
Okay, so you took the first shot, and how did you feel, or shots, and how did you feel after that first round?
After that, like, sports just weren't the same. Like, I couldn't breathe very easily. I was tired. I just wasn't motivated to, like, do anything pretty much. But it wasn't, like, as bad as whenever we had, like, I had the second one.
Okay, so you even though you weren't feeling well, you did still go back and get another one?
Yeah,
And,
we weren't sure, like, what
We
was
didn't
causing
realize.
it.
Yeah.
No, of course not. And did you also just have the Gardasil on the second one, or did you have other shots as well?
I think the second one was just Gardasil.
Just Gardasil,
Yes.
okay. And what happened after that?
After that one, I was pretty much just sleeping, like, all the time. I couldn't really like do anything. I was tired all the time. I was nauseous. I was lightheaded,
We
and
thought you had the flu.
yeah.
We left the doctor's office, and about 30 minutes after we left the doctor's office, she said, I don't feel good. I'm like, all right, we'll go lay down, you know. But then the rest of the week, she didn't get out of bed. We thought maybe she got the flu from the doctor's office. But that turned into 2 weeks, and then turned into 3 weeks, and then other things just started happening. She started crying because her right leg, it just felt like pins and needles were in her leg, and she could hardly walk on it. Next thing you know, she was just blank stare. When you looked at her, all she was a blank stare, and it was like one eye was moving and the other eye wasn't moving. So we took her to the doctors repeatedly from that point on, and they went and did a is it an EKG? Is that what they? And they said that it looked like she was having microburst seizures. So from there, they sent us to Children's Hospital, where we had all the electrodes connected to her head, and they did the flashing in her face, and that's when she had a reaction. But they were calling it microburst seizures, and they put her on seizure medication at that point.
Yeah. They put me on like a lot of different medications, and they all just had side effects like really quickly to me.
And that's the point. If every good.
They thought she had Lyme too.
Yes, they thought she had Lyme.
Who's they?
disease.
Which
The
doctors?
doctors.
At the
We just
hospital?
kept taking her back.
Yeah.
She was back multiple times for
A lot.
different things.
Her period stopped completely. When she, from that day on, it quit completely. And like I said, we didn't realize at first. We let her take doxycycline. We let her get on the birth control pill to restart her periods. We let her take the seizure medication, but each one of those had their own side effects, including that they told her she was basically crazy, and they put her on antidepressants.
And you took
that-
all of this. You took all of the medication they gave you.
Yeah, but we didn't. I don't think I took it for very long.
No.
Because I would just get side effects like really quickly.
really quickly.
And did at any point any of these doctors ask you about vaccines or anything like that? No.
Never. It wasn't till about 9 months after the second vaccine that our chiropractor said, hey, I know a friend whose daughter had similar things to your daughter who had the HPV vaccine. And I was like, oh. I was like, well, I'm sure it wasn't that. Why would the doctor, give her something like that? And then I was like, wait a minute. That's when I got all of her records. It was the very day. And within 30 minutes, the following day, we were calling the doctor's office. This kid doesn't feel good. A week later, we were calling the doctor's office.
Not
And
to mention the time before she got sick afterwards too.
right, right after the first one, which we didn't realize.
And your son had got sick.
Yeah.
My son had gotten sick, and that's when I called and was like, when did he have it? When did, you know what I mean? Because they were like, she has gastroparesis because her stomach wasn't working. Everything she ate, she threw up. So they put her on Prilosec and whatever it is for throwing up. But that made her sick and made her sicker. Everything she took, if there was a side effect to any medicine, she got it. Including the
She has to watch what she eats now. She can't have no dairy. She's
allergic.
Yeah.
sensitive to gluten. She used to be my ice cream eating buddy, but now she can't do that
Yeah,
anymore.
Right. So what is it like today? What are your? You've obviously got some help.
Yeah, because before, she had to help me to the bathroom and stuff like that for 6 months before, and I quit school and everything like that because I couldn't go to school, so I kind of just couldn't do sports, couldn't do anything. But now, obviously, I just graduated school, but I went to school, I got back into school, got back into sports. I still have bad days, but some days are good, some days are bad, just depends on the day. Most people think I'm fine, but in the morning, that's normally when it's worse, so I know to either just stay home and just sleep, or whenever I do go out, I just gotta be careful and just, but
And when you say it's worse, describe the feelings, what you're going through.
I'm very lightheaded, I'm very tired.
POTS.
Yeah, I have POTS, and then sometimes I have microbursts of seizures and stuff like that. So it just makes me really tired, so I pretty much just stay in bed whenever that stuff happens. And I get nauseous.
Have the school and your friends, did they support you?
Yes, I had a whole bunch of people texting me today and be like, good luck. And I'm like, oh, love you all.
It's so important that talking about this. Can we see some of these records that you've got?
Yeah, I mean, whatever you would like to see, I have them.
Do you have her vaccine records?
I
I'd be
do.
really interested to know what you got that first Gardasil shot visit.
Let's see. HPV, I believe. Oh no, actually, I was wrong. On August 24th, all she had was the HPV. And on January 19th, all she had was the HPV.
So undeniably.
Undeniably.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, let me just double check, because I never want to lie about anything. Nope, that's the
And look
only
at that.
two things.
With all due respect, I mean, is this your shot
This is
record?
hers, yes.
My goodness.
This is
You
page
really have-
one.
You've had a lot
Yes.
of vaccines. You've had chickenpox vaccine. You've had Prevnar. 1, 2, 3, 4 Prevnars.
And the flu mist. Even the flu.
Wow.
So,
You are lucky to be alive.
Yes, yes.
And then this page is the HPV, the influenza, the meningitis, and the other
Meningitis,
detail.
another detail. Okay, so question to you all. Are we done with vaccines?
Oh my goodness.
I was never a fan to begin with, honestly.
No, he wasn't. And as a mom, you know, you just think you're doing the best thing that you can for your kid because you love them and you want to, you know, just do what's best for them. But, you know, you just always think that nobody would ever lie to you or not tell you, or, you know, the adverse reactions are real and they're life changing. But, now, no, she's never had another one since. My family hasn't. My grandchildren are not vaccinated. And I have at least 8 other babies now that are in our community that have not been vaccinated because of us and me being vocal. And I have multiple families who reached out to me and were like, you know, what vaccine was that she got? And I'm like, the HPV, you know, and they're like, okay, because I don't want to get that for my daughter. And I'm like, it's not just that vaccine. It's not just that vaccine. An adverse reaction can happen with any vaccine. So they quit vaccinating their children because of her.
Even being like around people that have like vaccines, I get like side effects with it too.
From the shedding.
You can feel it when someone's been vaccinated.
Yeah, I get really sensitive spots and I can't even like wear like shirts or anything like that because like it just hurts to even touch. So I just go to bed.
That's really interesting because I think that's what a lot of kids that are nonverbal with autism from a vaccine injury, I think that's definitely what they have. Can you describe that a little bit?
I'm gonna tell your
like-
eye story.
Yeah. So this one kid, like, he kissed me when I told him no because he just got his vaccine, and I normally had like the sensitive spots like on my like lower stomach and like ribs and stuff like that, but this was like the first time I had it like on my face. So I texted her because I was in school, and I was like, my face like is like on fire, like I cannot touch it, like I don't know, like I just need to go home. So then I get home and she's like looks at me and she's like, is it the left side of your face? And I was like, yeah, how'd you know that? And she's like, your eye's not moving.
Literally, it was the creepiest thing as a mom. She's talking to me, you know, just talking away, and this side of her face is like paralyzed. Like, it was not moving. The eye was not moving, and she's just talking. Her lips are like semi-moving on this side, her cheeks, you know, your eyebrows, you know, as you're talking, and this side of her face, her eye was not moving. It was the creepiest thing I've ever witnessed, you know, of all the things that we went through with carrying her down the hallway just to get her to the bathroom because she was throwing up every morning because her stomach wasn't working, and then she would like seize or pass out in the bathroom, and I would just catch her and down on the floor and put a towel under her head till, you know, her twin brother's brushing his teeth as she's like stepping over her because he still had to go to school, you know, because he didn't have the HPV vaccine.
So your twin brother did not get it.
No.
He's like very scared of needles.
So he cried and screamed that day because I was going to get it for him too.
It's very traumatic for you guys as parents and the siblings to see your daughter in that state, and the emotion and the trauma that it causes.
Yeah.
It doesn't just affect you, it affects so many people around you that love you. And I don't think that people really understand that because it's
Because I mean, like, I've been blessed to be a stay-at-home mom, and take care of her, because I mean it was a lot for the first probably 3 years. It was a lot, just helping her and helping her to the bathroom, and then checking her blood pressure that was so low that it wasn't even funny, and it was a lot. And then the guilt as a parent for doing this to your child, which she tells me all the time, Mom, I don't blame you. You thought you were doing what was best. So I'm sorry.
So all the Gardasil girls that I interview, like you, they all say that at some point medical professionals say, it's in your head, and that's very hurtful when you're really in pain. So talk me through what that was like. Who said that maybe it's in her head?
Her doctor was like, it's just in her head. She's stressed out, and this is her body's way of dealing with the stress. And because her period stopped, and like I said, I mean, I have her DNA.
Are they back now, your periods?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
But we've detoxed. I mean, we have gone holistic through all of
She
this.
changed a lot of eating habits and
Yeah.
seen some.
Because all the pills that the doctors were giving her were not making her better. They were making her sicker because she was having side effects. And once we realized that this was Gardasil, we changed everything. And that's when my baby started to heal. Was when we went the holistic route, and we're always trying, new things. And like I said, I have right down to her DNA in my file. She has the MTHFR gene. I mean, I have it all.
Are you off all the medication now?
Mm-hmm.
All seizure medication, everything?
Yeah. The seizure medication was not.
It was bad.
Yeah.
So now she knows what her triggers are. She knows, to go to haunted houses, whoever girlfriend that she goes with, she knows that she has to close her eyes and
Or my
talk.
brother carries me through it.
So it's flashing lights and
Brother.
things.
Yeah.
Her brother carries her.
So you still have seizures?
Yeah. I don't really have like many full-blown ones. They're kind of just like, I'm just like zoned out. But like, if you're talking to me, like, I can still like acknowledge you. I might not say anything back, or my speech might be like
Slurred.
Yeah, but
And what have you found, not that Children's Health Defence gives any medical advice out, but what have you found food-wise and everything that's been the best help for you?
just, I mean, he grows our like vegetables and stuff like that, so I think,
Her own cow.
yeah, but not all, most of them,
Yeah.
I feel like that just
So
all
organic?
natural, yeah.
Yeah, we've been blessed to be able to have our own half cow that we raised, and a nice big huge garden. But of course we buy organic, and she stays away from gluten and dairy. She cannot have dairy. She'll have a reaction,
Really?
and she ate it all the time before.
What is your advice to people your age that were like you? They don't know. They're just going
say,
in.
like, just don't get it. Like, you can obviously like tell other people have had reactions. You may or may not have a reaction, or even if you do have a reaction, you're like, oh, that's not from it. I would say just don't get it. It's better off not to.
This story is awful, but if there's any good that's come out of this, listening to your mom talking about those grandchildren that have had no shots.
Mm-hmm.
I always say that we need to, you and my son Billy and all the other people with names on the bus, you guys have saved so many, woke us up to the dangers of vaccines and shots and stuff.
Yes.
So really thank you to you for taking one for the team, to waking us all up.
Yes.
We need to look after you.
She's truly a really good kid.
I can see that.
Yeah, she is. So, like I said, all she wants in life is to, get married and, and have kids. Some things that people take for granted, everybody just goes and plays sports and goes off to, college and does whatever they want. And she,
I mean, I took it for granted before, so I was right with them.
What do you want to be? What's your sort of dream profession?
I'm going to be an esthetician and makeup artist, and right now
You're going to be a what? Say that again.
Esthetician and makeup artist.
A makeup artist.
And right now I am a permanent makeup artist, and then I'm going to school for esthetician and regular makeup. So
Non-toxic,
eyebrows.
please. Organic. Yeah. Well, that's wonderful. And you're in a much better place, even though you still have these issues.
Yes.
It's a good profession for her because she can make her own schedule and everything. So it's definitely changed the path that she's been on.
Yeah.
And, you know, having her periods again, hopefully she can have kids because she was in premature ovarian failure. We had her tested when her periods quit. So, you know, now that she's having her periods again, she hopes someday to, you know, have her own kids. But
So, to someone that could be watching right now that is suffering in having had either Gardasil or any shot, in fact, what would your advice be to them if they're feeling very low and feeling like they're, you know, maybe not going to get through? What would you say to them?
Definitely, like, family is, like, you always gotta stay close to them, because, like, even, like, some of my friends, they kind of just, like, dipped. They they just didn't stay around because I couldn't do anything because I was just in bed, but they are always there for me. God's always there for you. Like, just, it's better to stay here than off yourself. Like, I honestly, I was like, I didn't want to be here anymore, but I ended up doing it.
Okay.
I talked to them, and they helped me through it, and church family helped me through it. It was it's just, you're gonna get through it.
Will you give so much hope to so many people, and we're truly sorry that this happened to your family, and thank you for telling your story. It's just a brave thing to do, to drive all the way out here and tell us about it. And you're a very beautiful, wonderful young woman, and I look forward to I think you're going to speak more on this. And we look forward to having our nails done and our eyebrows done.
I had mine microbladed 2 months ago.
I think we need to set up a directory of people that we love in this movement and support you all. But thank you. Does there anything else? Would you like to say anything?
No, I was just appreciative that you guys do this and let other people know.
Yeah, we're going to let everybody know. We're going to put your story right on out there. Thank you. You're a wonderful family. And thank you for telling us this story.
I'm happy you had us.